this is Matt Welch with Spiritual Media Blog, and today I'm here with Carroll Ann Friedmann, author of Practicing the Yoga Sutras. Carroll, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thanks.
So, to get started, tell us what is your book about and why did you write it?
My book is an opportunity to encounter this very ancient text, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, in a very modern and personal way. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are a text that have been used by the yoga community for many, probably thousands of years. We're not quite sure how long. And there have been a lot of really wonderful commentaries written about them, mostly by scholars like Edwin Bryant or sannyas, monks like Swami Hariharananda, and or by like Taimani. There are these really heavy, authoritative texts, and I've been teaching the Yoga Sutras to my yoga students in Charlottesville and through teacher trainings for a long time, about 15 years. And they, because of their structure, they're like aphorisms. They're very dry. They're not poetry. They're not prose. They're just these, it's almost like a geometry proof. They're very precise and rational. People just go, I don't understand this, and I don't think this applies to me, and this is just really weird stuff. But my experience with the sutras that began chanting them, and I grew to just see how extremely relevant and wonderful and practical and powerful they were. So I wrote this book to bring the sutras into a conversation with actual practicing normal people in a way that they could understand. And then I also embedded these journal response areas so that while they were reading the book, they could start to apply to practice the ideas that Patanjali has in their own lives and minds. Because I think it's a very, very powerful text, but it is rendered kind of inaccessible because of its terseness and relative obscurity.
Yeah, I really like how you take this that's so ancient and historical and break it down to like modern day living and something that we can just apply to our daily life. Can you provide some examples to that and maybe just start off from a big picture, just pretend somebody's never heard of the Yoga Sutras. What is a Yoga Sutra? What are some that you feel like are most helpful and how can we incorporate them into our lives?
The Yoga Sutras is, we believe, we meaning, scholars, a collection of practices and philosophical constructs that grew up from a community practicing yoga things, including, but not limited to, yoga asana postures, which is most people's encounter with yoga in the West, at least, begins in a postural class where you're taught to make shapes with your body. And then sometimes pranayama, sometimes people do breathing exercises. So even though there are many, many people doing these practices, they don't really understand why practicing yoga feels different and has different effects on the mind and the body than for, say, going on a great run or
Yeah.
spinning or doing other exercise. So what I think is amazing about the sutras is it explains that the goal of these practices is very profound. The goal of the practice of yoga is to stabilize and quiet the tumult of the mind in order to have an experience of this authentic, deep, unchanging reality called Atman, or the true self. And the belief in yoga, in the yoga system, is that every single being, not just humans, but all beings, carry this spark of consciousness in them, pure, unimpacted consciousness. And if we are able to align our minds, the circus act, the avalanche, the cacophony, quiet and align them with this consciousness, we have this aha experience of who we really are. And this changes everything. It changes the way we live in our bodies. It changes the way we relate to other people. And so the sutras describe this very practical, embodied, like action oriented process to take us to the quiet mind, chitta vritti nirodha, the restrained mind, the peaceful, equanimous mind, believing that all we have to do is quiet our minds down and bring them to a place of stability. And then we know, like that's it. We just see what's already there. It's kind of neat because yoga doesn't actually tell you you have to, I don't know, become something you're not or go searching for something or change. You just have to use these tools to bring the mind to a stable, quiet state. And then you're going to just know. It's going to be apparent who you really are. So people have this experience. I mean, early on, we'll have students who will come into our yoga studio and their very first practice or two, they'll leave in this kind of aha state, like what just happened to me? Or they'll be lying in, shavasana, they'll be lying in rest after the practice and feel this like electric sense of like peace and tranquility and awareness. And they're like, why did that happen? And the yoga system is this very scientific, by which I mean it's the result of many trials and errors and experimentation and repetition and refining way of creating equanimity in the mind and the body. And then people have this experience and they go, wait, what just happened? How can I replicate that? What was that? And so the Yoga Sutras lays out this incredibly elegant system based around these 8 limbs, the 8 limbs of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, and explains, okay, here's why this happened. This is what happened to you. And here's how you can do it again. And here's how you can actually create this sense of equanimity in a way that permeates your life. So that's the sutras have uh, there are little nuggets in there that are really great, but the whole system is really where it's at.
Okay, so like one piece of a within a big puzzle almost of the
Yeah,
yoga part.
they potentially tells us like here's what's in it for you in the first chunk. Like he describes this experience of equanimity called samadhi, and then in
Yeah,
the second chunk he says here are the 8 things you do to get there.
I
And then,
see.
yeah, then he says, here's the process by which you can achieve this equanimous mind. And then in the third chapter, he says, and when you do, here are the kind of weird things that might happen to you. Like you are going to find that your life is sort of completely illuminated in this very unusual way. And then in the fourth, the final book, he says, here's what it looks like when this system of yoga completely permeates your life. Here's what a liberated life looks like. So that's the book. And
Okay.
what I've done in here is I've just made it very accessible, very down to earth, practical, and also given people who read the book or use the book, because it's really a tool to be used. It's not really to be read, it's to be used like a practice tool, to give them an opportunity to apply the concepts directly to their own life and mind. So to immediately be able to say, okay, here's what this means for me.
That's great. And you mentioned one of them, Samyama. I mean, what are some of the other sutras and how do people apply those to their daily lives?
So one of my favorite ones is we call it the 4 locks and keys. Um, I'll chant it for you. It's Maitri Karuna Mudito Pekshanam Sukha Dukkha Punya Punya Vishayanam Bhavanatas Chitta Prasadanam. So that's what it sounds like in Sanskrit. And what it means is we encounter happiness in ourselves or happy people, sadness in ourselves or sad people, unhappy people, righteousness, goodness in ourselves or good people, and wickedness in ourselves or wicked people. And when we encounter these states, the happy, the unhappy, the wicked, and the righteous, we have conditioned responses to this. So you think, oh, we see happy people, and that means, oh, we're happy. Not so much. When we see happy people, we tend to respond with jealousy or envy or suspicion. So what he does, Patanjali says, when you encounter happy people, you are friendly to them, Maitri. When you encounter unhappy people, you are compassionate to them, Karuna. When you encounter righteous people, you rejoice, you celebrate them. And when you encounter wicked people, if you cannot be equanimous, you turn away. You
Okay.
turn away from wickedness. So these four keys unlock the experience of encountering happiness, unhappiness, um, righteousness, and wickedness. And what he says is, if you use these keys, it doesn't make you a good person or a bad person. It makes your mind bhavana chitta prasadanam. It makes your mind sweet. It makes your
Okay.
mind calm. So we practice the four locks and keys to maintain a steady, calm, peaceful mind. Not because we're good people or any. I mean, Patanjali, the ethics that are presented are really basic, straightforward ethics. He's really talking to us about how to get our minds under control. So that's an example, just having the four locks and the four keys as a sort of piece of your spiritual toolkit is really useful because you encounter an unhappy person and you get annoyed and you get impatient and you get judgmental. And then you go, hang on, this is disturbing me. If I am compassionate, I won't be disturbed. So
Yeah.
that's just like one example of the little, the little practices. They're practices, they're mental practices. They're not concepts or philosophies. They're actually things we do, either in our bodies or in our minds or in our relationships.
Yeah, training your mind to focus on these ideas. I like that. Thank you for explaining that because a lot of times I think when people think of yoga, they think of the poses and the
Mhm.
postures. So but these what I'm hearing is these sutras go beyond the poses and the
Yeah.
postures. These are ideas or principles that people carry on throughout their life, their day-to-day life, right?
Yeah, asana, the postures, is the third limb of yoga, and there are 8 limbs, and it comes third. So
Okay.
first is yama, and yama means you live in good relationship with people. You don't steal, you don't
Okay.
lie, you don't cheat, you don't take advantage of people. You're not promiscuous. You don't hoard. There are these kind of moral principles, and then once that's in place, you have peaceful relationships. Then the next thing is niyama, which are like spiritual principles. You are clean, you are content, you study, you devote your life to something bigger than you. These are the niyamas. Once you've gotten that taken care of, then there's asana. And what asana does, the
Mm.
postures, it makes the body healthy and strong and long lived so that it won't disturb you when you're trying to go further in your spiritual life. If you have a body that's diseased or uncomfortable or squirmy and can't sit still, it's really hard to do the more subtle practices of yoga, because your body's just restless. So
Right.
there's a sutra where Patanjali says yoga posture, asanas, they curb the natural restlessness of the mind. So that's why we do postures to make our minds less restless because the mind body connection is so strong. And then after that, we learn how to breathe. And then after that, we learn how to harness our senses for, good things and not just chase after them. And then after that, we learn how to concentrate and then how to meditate and then how to be absorbed in bliss. This is the progress of the 8 limbs. So asana comes pretty early. It's like it's very quick and it's very gross, meaning the body.
Right.
And then you get more subtle. You get into like emotions and then, breath and the way energy moves. And then you get really subtle when you start to meditate. So asana is kind of in the 8 steps, it's only step number 3, you know?
Okay.
And then you just keep going.
Yeah, this is fascinating to me because it seems like a lot of the yoga studios they just focus on the asanas. Like you just show up there and you do the stretching or some of them turn it into like basically a workout. But you don't hear about the Yoga Sutras and the other stuff about applying these principles to their
We joke about how asana is the gateway drug to yoga. It's like people come in because they want to they want to feel good, they want to look good, they want
Yeah.
to, and yoga makes you look. I mean, I'm 58 years old. I used to run marathons in my 20s. I am more strong, more flexible, more fit, more healthy than I've ever been in my life because of yoga asana and a really clean lifestyle.
Yeah.
But really it works. But the thing is, people, what I've found, we have a studio, a yoga shala, we call it, which means like a school, where people come in from those places, the kind of gym yoga places, and they say, we want more. Like, we want to go
Yeah.
deeper. And what's interesting about yoga postures is it wakes something up in people that makes them want to go deeper. It's not arbitrary. It's not like, in other words, people don't go and like play tennis for 5 years and go, I want to go deeper into tennis. Do you know what I mean? There's
Right.
something about yoga asana that is acting really deeply on the energetic body and on the mind that prepares people to go deeper. So the asanas are really powerful. They're not just another form of exercise. They're really, really powerful. But sometimes people just don't know what's happening to them. So
Wow. So the actual postures and the yoga movements are awakening some spiritual energy or their true
exactly.
self, even if people aren't necessarily aware of that.
Absolutely. Sometimes
Um,
even more when they're not aware, because then they don't intellectualize it. Like there are very, very powerful ways of being in the body. And, people, men and women studied this and systematized it for a very long time, much
right.
longer than tennis or running or any,
Yeah. Right.
bicycle. Yeah.
And so let's just, I mean, for the people who do just, they're going to do the asanas because they like the mind body connection, but they might not necessarily be as knowledgeable about the sutras. I mean, what kind of a practical advice would you have for them for getting the most out of their yoga practice? And then I also want to hear how to go deeper, but we'll just start kind of on that
Yeah.
surface level first. Like, they want to go to do a yoga class. I mean, what should they be thinking about during that yoga class? How can they get the most out of it?
Yeah, I mean, the first advice I would give to someone who really is not satisfied with the physical postures, who has this yearning to go further and deeper and has these, what is this questions, is to look around their community and look for what we call classical yoga
Yeah,
studios, which are lineage based. And these are, um, this is yoga that's still connected to the mothership in India, which is where yoga started, and has this awareness of the deep, resonant spiritual qualities of a yoga practice,
right.
and to find one of those places and practice there, because already they're going to be surrounded by a different kind of energy, like a different kind of
Yeah.
vibration, and they're probably going to encounter a teacher or a couple of teachers who know some things they can teach. Yoga is a very lineage based practice. It's designed for a teacher to work with a student one on one. And yoga isn't really designed to be self-taught. It really should be taught from teacher to
Hmm.
student. So like my teacher is an 84-year-old Indian woman, Saraswati Joyce. She lives in Mysore, India. I went and studied with her twice a year for 8 years. And,
Wow.
until I felt like, and my sutras teacher is Dr. M.A. Jayashree, again, an older woman who's an expert. And she taught me, and there's a depth, a kind of wealth to these lineages. So I would say, first of all, find a community that is deep, and practice there. And then while you're doing yoga, um, we use in the Ashtanga system, which is my yoga system, we use gaze. So we look in one place. So our minds don't look around. So
Yeah.
in every posture, I have a gazing point down my nose, at my thumb, on my toes, somewhere. And we use breath. So we're very conscious of I'm inhaling, I'm exhaling. We actually move on breath. So when we make a movement, we're either making it on an exhale or an inhale. So this creates a very meditative quality to the practice.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing every day. And there's a real benefit to the classical systems. all use a lot of repetition. So one of the challenges in modern yoga is that you go into a class and there are mirrors everywhere, so it's very distracting, and there's loud music, so you're like constantly being pulled out of yourself into this outward experience, and the teacher just makes something up. So like every day you're like, I wonder what this class is going to be like, and it's fun, it's super fun, but it doesn't cultivate inner awareness. And when you practice yoga in a quiet room without mirrors, without music, with just the sound of your breath and with concentration, you have this deep inner experience. And
Yeah.
it's very and you don't have to be good at it. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to be like amazing at the poses. And you can still have this really quiet, beautiful inner experience. So not all yoga studios and yoga experiences offer that kind of thing. But I think for the people who want to go deeper, they need to look for that. They need to find
Yeah.
those spaces.
No, I think that is good advice because yeah, I mean some of the yoga classes I've been to, they basically seem like aerobics and other
Yeah.
classes, which is there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. But then the other classes, I think they do make an effort to try to go a little deeper. So I'm curious when you teach a class, how much of your class is, and I guess tell us first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself because you've done a lot of yoga teaching. So tell us a little bit about that. But then when you teach a class, I mean, how much of it is asanas? How much of it is like chanting? How much of it is just explaining some of these yoga sutras and ideas?
Yeah. Well, my background, I was a scholar of religion. I have a couple of graduate degrees in religious studies. And so I already had a kind of spiritual orientation when I found yoga. And I immediately resonated with that part of it just because that's how I'm wired.
Right.
And I found first integral yoga, which is a beautiful classical lineage, a hatha tradition, which means they do poses one at a time. It's a little more it's slower and but it's a really very powerful tradition. And then I was more kind of athletic, like I was a marathon runner. So when I found Ashtanga yoga, which is a more kind of cardiovascular, a
It's
little more
intense.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
I was like, I'm home. This is it. So my classes at our shala, we Monday through Friday we hold what we call Mysore, which is a our students come in and they have memorized a sequence, and it's almost like a study hall.
yeah.
We taught them one by one by one, and they work. And I walk around like I'm gardening, and I stop and I help students, but it's very individual. So like one student might be using blocks, and one student might be doing this extra poses, and so it's super tailored to
Yeah.
the students who come in, so immediately they're having a very individual experience, a very personal experience. So we do that 5 days a week, morning and evening, and sometimes we'll play some chant in the background, but it's very quiet, and it's mostly because we're above a restaurant, and if we don't, we hear them banging around. And then there's very little talking. There's no mirrors. So it's again designed to be an inward experience. It's also hard, like truly, it's challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I am now on our third, so we have 4 or 5 series. It took me about 3.5 years to complete the first series, another 4 years to complete the second series, and now I've just completed the third series, and that took another 3 years. So like it's slow and it's very, very rigorous. And then on the weekends, when people have more flexibility, I teach a pranayama class every Saturday morning, followed by meditation, and it's guided meditation. And then I teach a vinyasa class, which is more playful. It's like more ordinary yoga, just so that we don't get too rigid. And
Yeah.
then on Sundays, we joke, we call it yoga church. And yoga church is, and that's what they all call it. And it kind of it definitely serves as a deep spiritual community for my students and for us. People come in, they sit down, we chant for about 30, 45 minutes. We chant in Sanskrit, we chant yoga sutras, we chant bhajans, we chant shanti mantras, and then we stop and we discuss. And over the course of, I guess we've been doing this about 12 years now, we have worked our way through. We're now finally in the fourth book of the Yoga Sutras, which is about, there are 200 sutras. So we go very slowly. And sometimes somebody has something going on and we just talk about that. But we have this discussion with each other based around these concepts. And this group has grown and grown. And now we have people who come online, we have students. So it's beautiful. And it's like Sunday school, so that's what we call it, yoga church. And then after that, we get up and we do a practice together. We call it a led primary. So we do this, kind of ritual practice together of yoga, asana. And it's really wonderful and very rich. And in our town, which has 26 yoga studios, and I'm not exaggerating,
Wow.
we're a town of 80,000 people, we're tiny, and we have yoga coming out of our ears. We are the only
You have
yoga
20, did I hear that right? You have 26 yoga studios in a town of 80,000
uh-huh.
people.
Yep,
Where,
that's
do you mind sharing
Charlottesville,
what's,
Virginia. We're like a yoga, I don't know what it is, but and we even have the University of Virginia runs its own huge yoga program. So,
yeah.
but what I was going to say is, of all these programs, all these yoga studios, we're the only studio that offers weekly pranayama, any chanting at all, and any yoga philosophy. So we are an outlier. And you know like
Yes.
people find us when they're ready for that. They find us and they come and they go, oh my gosh, this is incredible, this is like what I've been looking for. But most people are not looking for that when they come to yoga. So my book is to help ordinary yoga people, like people who just go, this feels really cool, I wonder why, to help understand what's going on in there, and to use the book as a sort of self guided exploration into the philosophy or whatever, the deeper practices of yoga. And hopefully it'll help people be less kind of freaked out by it. The other neat thing is yoga doesn't require a belief system or religion or any of that. Like it's not, I mean, this kind of yoga. There's certainly other yoga styles that require you believe things, but Patanjali's yoga just says, try this and see what happens. That's all. Just try
Yeah.
this. And if
Yeah.
it works, great. And if it doesn't, then throw it out.
Yeah, I mean, I've been practicing yoga now for a little over 10 years and
Mm.
Ashtanga coincidentally for the last like 2 years.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it really has helped. It has helped me to relax more, and I try to use it as a spiritual practice to connect more with my true self, or just, higher self or whatever you want to call that. So I mean, I like how you are trying to, like, integrate the spirituality into it. And so I mean, what do you think is going on? I mean, to the yeah, I think when I first started, I thought, maybe I'm just doing some stretching and like that really helps me to relax and stretches my muscles. But it sounds like on a deeper level, what do you think is going on?
So the Ashtanga system, if this is what you're practicing, is it's an elegant, highly intelligent series that systematically works with all the bodies at once. So yoga um, understands that we live in not just one body, but we live in 5 bodies simultaneously, not kind of like Russian nesting dolls, but in a more like a web of bodies. So our most gross body is called Annamaya Kosha, the food body, the body made out of food. So this body, all of it, anything that has molecules is made out of food, what we ate or what our mothers ate or whatever. So yoga works on the food body by putting this body into different shapes, by keeping our muscles and our joints strong and flexible and healthy, by um, pumping our circulation and our respiratory system, by getting us upside down and sideways and backwards so that our body maintains its full range of motion and mobility, like when we were little kids, we could do stuff like put our legs behind our heads. So yoga gets us back to that full range of uh, physical mobility. But then the next body is called pranamaya kosha, the body made of prana, or the body made of energy. And yoga also works on the energy body. And the idea is that the energy body is sort of roughly mapped on the nervous system. And the two main um, channels of energy are called prana and apana. And prana is located mostly here in the sternum, and it lifts us up and spreads us out, and it makes us bright and receptive and like communicative. It's our external, our sort of extroverted energy. And then
Mhm.
there's apana, which is located down in the pelvic floor. And apana grounds us. It makes us solid and stable and secure and effective. It helps us get things done. It's like the foundation. So when our practice or our lives are too aponic, we're kind of grumpy and we walk around like this and we scowl and we don't like to talk to people and we're hyper introverts and we get cranky all the time. And if our energy body is hyperpronic, then we're like flighty and spaced out and we can't remember where we put our keys and we can't keep a job and blah, So yoga, when we do yoga asana and breathing, we work on the energetic body, balancing prana and apana until we have this beautiful, balanced, where the body and the mind are kind of in the zone, where they have stability and brightness, where they have the sutra that refers to this is sthira sukhamasanam. Asana posture is steady and comfortable. It's solid and bright. So this is one of the things that happens to us in a yoga practice is we work in the pranic body. And then the third body, after Annamaya Kosha, the food body, Pranamaya Kosha, the energy body, is Manomaya Kosha. And Manomaya Kosha is the emotional body. It's the body that consists of thoughts and feelings and ideas and attitudes and our ego and all that stuff. And yoga also works on this body because there's a chant that we do in Ashtanga yoga. You may have heard it, the Vande Gurunam that we do at
Yeah.
the beginning. Do y'all do that? So there's a
Yeah.
part of that that goes, it's Vande Gurunam Charana Vande da 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 da. But there's this part of it that goes, Samsara Hala Hala
Yeah.
Moha Shantie. So samsara is the glut of like sludge that lives in our minds and our bodies. It's like this conditioned pattern of thought that makes us neurotic and all that. And hala hala is what happens when it kind of bubbles up out of us. So sometimes when we're in a yoga class, we suddenly think, I'm going to cry, or I'm going to scream, or I'm going to laugh, or I'm going to punch somebody, or, the hala hala comes like bubbling up.
Interesting.
And then moha shantiye, if we practice and we continue, when that happens, if we have this and we continue to practice, moha shantiye means we are liberated into peace. The stuff rises up and it dissolves, and it rises up and it dissolves. So it's like we're doing like deep excavation work on our hala hala, our our sludge, by asana and breathing and all this. And so Manamaya Kosha, the mental body, also starts to become healthy. We get healthier in our minds because we're like relieving all of this, this gunk, these little monsters. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
And
I
sometimes
think
it's
you
really emotional. Have you had that experience?
No,
And
I have. I mean, it was very strange. I mean, I remember in one class, like I felt like I was going to cry, and I
totally.
I didn't know why, and
Yep.
I actually tried to hold it back because I thought it would look weird, but I
No,
mean, it
it's
was
totally
just
normal. For
like,
us, it's a sign that our students are progressing. Like
yeah,
Bashar Lewis used to say, okay, first stage is you get diarrhea. This is when you're working on in the Anamaya Kosha, the physical body, and you're doing all this twisting and turning and bending.
right.
Your body's getting like clean physically. And then the next stage is you start to like be able to wake up in the morning and get out of bed and go to work. So the third stage, when you kind of get deeper into practice, is this mental purging, this hala hala moha shanti.
Yeah,
You do that for Manamaya Kosha, the mind body. And then the last two bodies are much more subtle. Vijnanamaya Kosha is the wisdom body, or the sort of, I guess we would call it like the archetypal body,
yeah.
like Jungian archetypes,
Huh.
these deep, deep um, resonances, these deep beliefs, these deep feelings, these things that aren't like memories, but they're just like really deep in us. And our ability to be wise, to be like to do the right thing at the right time for
Yeah.
the right reasons. So yoga starts to work on that body. It creates a brightness, an ability to discriminate between good and bad things, and what we want and what we don't want, and to discriminate about, like, just our ordinary activities and the way we interact with people. So this is Vijnanamaya Kosha. So we find that, oh my gosh, my relationships are changing as a
Mm.
result of this yoga. What a crazy thing.
Yeah.
Like, what
Yeah.
does what I do on a mat have to do with my relationships? And then finally, the fifth body is Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss body. And this is the body that you feel when you're lying in Shavasana and all is right with the world, when you're like, oh my goodness, everything is okay. And there's this body of bliss, of Ananda, like the joy of the universe that lives in us. And when we work on all these five bodies, sometimes that body just gets clean and bright. And as we start to clean up the other five bodies and get everything working like it should, then Anandamaya Kosha just shines out, so we become joyful. And that's kind of the end goal of yoga, is to be happy, because when we're happy, we can be useful. We
Yeah.
can make things better for other people. When we're not happy, we tend to be a burden on other people. And when we're happy, we can be useful and we can be peaceful and we can make the world better and all those good things. So that's like the end goal.
That's great. No, I appreciate you. You're putting words into
Yeah.
experiences that I've had, and if I've had them, I'm sure other people have had them, and they're kind of like, what's going on
What
here?
is this?
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, so that's really cool. Thank you
Well,
for
that's why I
sharing
wrote the
that.
book, because I wanted people like you who had had this kind of experience, like, whoa, to have words for it. And also,
Yes.
the book, I'll show you,
Yeah, please show it to us, please.
has these, um, so it has like some illustrations, but the best part about it is I explain a text in like normal language, totally non-academic normal language. And then it has these bubbles. And the
Oh,
idea is that
nice.
you write, so like
I
I
love it.
actually do it myself. I figured if I'm gonna do this book, I should do this book. So like here's my writing. So I've read the thing, and then it says reflect, like this one says, would you describe your own mind as clear and strong, confused and weak, or somewhere in between? So it asks you to reflect on the state of your own mind. And this is all the way through the book. The entire book is
Nice.
full of bubbles. So when you get done with the book, which most of my students who've used it it's taken them a while. Like they may do, like, what I recommend to people is, like, before you go to bed, do one sutra or
Y-
do one page or do one bubble,
Good.
and
Yeah.
just slowly, 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 slowly work your way through it, because the book itself is a practice manual. It's not a book to read or to, like, I don't know, it's not to just like swallow in one. It'd be like
Yeah.
eating, the entire Thanksgiving dinner, So it's really a book to be like taken in tiny, tiny little pieces, and to
Right.
be reflected on and digested and experienced. And maybe you go back again and again. And I think hopefully for people like you who've had this experience, it'll help them put some words and it'll also help them know how to replicate it. Because what happens to you when you start a yoga practice is you have these things kind of fall on you. Like, all of a sudden, somehow or another, I felt really peaceful. How do I do that again? Why did that
Yeah.
happen? How do I get that
Right.
back?
Yeah.
And the book says, okay, here's the system. This is why you got to this place. And this is how you can get there again. It's not magic. It's not woo woo, it's like a
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, pretty much after almost every yoga practice, I seem more peaceful and more
practice.
relaxed, and my days are a lot better. I respond better, to my wife and my kid, and I'm just able to
Totally.
interact with other people. And it's, for me too, it's interesting because I've meditated. I meditated before I did yoga, and I like yoga, I like meditation, but I personally have found yoga more relaxing. I wouldn't necessarily say it's more beneficial, but they're just like apples and oranges, but it is more in the moment, it's more relaxing for me. I come away with it.
It's a really important observation, because in the eight limbs, remember I told you there's this progression.
Yeah.
Meditation is number seven. Like, it comes the idea is that to really meditate, to really come into a state of really equanimity, like effortless equanimity, you have a lot of work to do to get to that place.
Yes.
So the practices of yoga are the preliminary work. They're the real kind of boots on the ground work to make your body and your mind and your prana, your energy and your wisdom and all this ready to have a
Right.
real meditation experience. So a lot of what people call meditation in our culture is really just a valiant attempt to concentrate, or it's just kind of zoning out, you know? And
Yes.
the book, Practicing the Yoga Sutras and Yoga Sutras, explains meditation like, okay, dudes, this is what meditation is. Like what you're doing, like if it's meditation in the classical yoga sense, here are its qualities, and here's how you do
No, that's such a good point.
it.
Because yeah, I remember I had this like spiritual coach that I talked to, and it's like, yeah, my meditations aren't really that deep. And this was like probably like 10 years ago. And she's like,
Yeah,
well, you're not meditating. And
yeah.
I mean, I was like, I kind of thought about it and I was like, well, yeah, I probably spend most of that time just like thinking about what I'm going to do that day and then trying not to think about what I'm going to do and then just focusing on my breath. Over time, that's changed. Like, especially, with the past, few years, I feel like I actually now I can actually meditate, but, it took a while to do.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not the eight limbs of yoga, Patanjali's yoga, which is this eight-limbed practice, is definitely not the only path to meditation. There are many other paths that work for people. But for people like me, who are, I mean, Patanjali's yoga works really well for a certain kind of temperament. And it tends to be, in our culture, I think it's a good fit because it's based on action. It's based on like practices. And we're in the West, we just want to do stuff. Like we're really action oriented. And so other more esoteric practices can kind of fall flat for us because we are so practical. We want to like do stuff. And
Right.
yeah, and we want to like get it done. So it harnesses that kind of almost like OCD energy that we have so much of in the West, and it harnesses it
It
toward peace,
it
toward
does.
equanimity,
It
which is really
does.
amazing that we
It
can take this kind of,
it
and we can channel it into
it
a
it
positive thing.
It does. So, I mean, I've definitely noticed that with me. So, think that's awesome that you've written this book to kind of explain it on a practical level, but also like a deeper spiritual level too. Like, that's great. So where can we get this book, or where
Yeah.
can we learn more
So
about?
it is available on Amazon. However, most people know that Amazon is a beast, and you can order it on Amazon, and it takes a little bit of time to get there, which is fine. Or you can order it directly from our distributor, which is Baker and Taylor. But the best way to do that is I have a website, which is just practicingtheyogasutras.com. And if you go to that website, it's all one word, practicingtheyogasutras.com. You'll have, there's just a link. You click on it, it takes you right there, and you can order it that way. And we also have it available in, on a Kindle platform. And then before too long, there'll be an Audible. I'm working on
Oh,
that.
that's
Done.
awesome. That's
Yeah, it's going
great.
to take some time. But the other thing is, I have on my website all the chant. So if chant resonates with you, I've chanted all the sutras and it's just free on the website. So if you want
Oh,
to
nice.
listen to the chanting, my mom does this. She is using the book and she'll listen to it chanted and then she'll do her study. It's like she set up this kind of ritual. And that's what I recommend for people is like, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, just sit down, light a candle, and work on it for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, But the chant, some people really resonate with that. And so all the chants are there on the website. And then some other cool stuff too.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. I mean,
Yeah.
we've covered a lot. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you were hoping to get to
That's,
tonight?
what I'm hoping, I would like to kind of take it on the road. I'd like to go to yoga studios and sit down with people and have conversations and do some teaching, but also a lot of listening. because I found that this is really powerful for group work. So I designed the book to be used for like teacher trainings and small group activities. So like if there's a yoga studio out there that's like, gosh, we really do want to be more, spiritual. We really want to like go deeper. If they got the book, they could do a study group and it's like ready made. They just go, hey, read these pages and fill it out and then we'll talk about it. So I'm hoping that it'll be a resource for people, like you said, who really want to go deeper into their practice and don't really know how to get started with that. Or they read some commentary that's like super academic and they're going, this just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's my real prayer, is that the book will be a manual for people, ordinary folks who just want to have a deeper experience of yoga.
That sounds great. And I mean, just hearing you talk, I think I know that's going to really be able to help a lot of people do that. So,
Mhm.
um,
Good.
yeah. So Carol Ann, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And I'll look forward to reading the book and learning more about you.
Yeah, please do. Well, thank you, Matt. I really appreciate this, and I think the work you're doing is really great.
Oh, thanks.
Great.